Just how close are the Steelers from dethroning the big bad New England Patriots? That's what we're here to talk about today. Brennan Albert is here. I'm Adrian Fedke. 2017 Pittsburgh Steelers preview. We're talking about the Steel City.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's a team that, every year they're at the model of consistency in the NFL, always being in a opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And hey, guess what? They're going to be in the same spot again this year.
Yeah, and is there anybody in the conference that can actually challenge them? Who in the conference can actually get to the AFC Championship game that aren't the Steelers and the Patriots?
Well, what's really going to be interesting is this season is in the AFC is who wins the AFC? Who is that one seed? And honestly, this year it's going to be crucial because if you're the 2 seed and you have to have let's play it out. Let's say everyone thinks New England gets the 1. Great. Okay, maybe now the Steelers get the 3. That means in the 2 seed, when in the semifinals, they're going to have to go to Oakland or vice versa. That's going to be tough. So there's a really big drop off in the AFC after 3. So if you get the 2 seed, it pretty much just means you're going to have a really tough game. If you're the 1 seed, probably going to have a significantly easier opponent, whether that's the Chiefs or whether that's like the Jags or that's someone like the Texans or the Colts or the Texans, that AFC South getting the 4 seed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the AFC West, I mean, for the Raiders, I'll kind of give it away right now. I got them going 10-6, but not because, they've gone downhill. It's more because the schedule that they face. I mean, the AFC West is going to be really tough this year. 8-8, 9-7. Chargers are on the rise. The Chiefs are pretty tough, and they also got to play the NFC East, which has become a bloodbath conference too. I mean, the Giants made the playoffs last year. You got Dallas. You got the Eagles on the rise. We'll see about the Redskins. So Oakland. I mean, that 2 seed is going to be highly coveted, and the Steelers, I think, are in a better spot schedule-wise to get it than the Raiders are.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Adrian. I think the Steelers, I had them going 12-4 this year. I think like traditionally they do. Traditionally, somehow the Ravens find a way to steal one of the 2 games of Pittsburgh. So I have that as one of their losses. I think the Chiefs might be a team who might be able to beat the Steelers. Steelers are good for 1 game a year, regular season anyway, finding a way to offensively just have a letdown. And Chiefs are certainly a good enough defense to hold the Steelers in check. They have the Pats. Pats are going to be a tough one, so I have that as their 3rd loss. And then I threw the Bengals in there. I mean, I think that one's a 50-50. I could see the Steelers sweeping the Bengals this year very realistically, but I wasn't ready to say definitively, yes, they will sweep them. So I gave them 12-4 this year, and I think that's going to be good enough for the Steelers to get the 2 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, that's what I got too. I got 12-4, 2 seed, your usual business. Get to the AFC Championship game, and they lose this to the Patriots. So there you go.
Yeah, very likely. I mean, I think the Patriots are not exactly unbeatable, but they're really, really good. It's going to be those 3 teams. I think personally, with what we have in the AFC, I think that's still better than what the NFC has to offer. So I think the Steelers and the Raiders are probably going to be the best true opponents to the Patriots.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about the ascension of the Steelers in general because if you think back, 2012, 2013, this team was only winning 8 games. So the turnaround for them has been, pretty quick. You remember the great defense that they had about a decade ago? Well, they had to replace all those guys, and now they got a bunch of youth and guys that I don't know how to explain it because we just right before the show we looked at the sack numbers and we were kind of shocked. I mean, they had 48 sacks last year, which was 3rd in the league, and last year was 38, which was 9th. But you look at the roster, it's like, well, who's their big guy? They really don't have a big sack guy, but they all do it kind of collectively.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers definitely kind of do by a war of attrition when it comes to their sacks. They got several guys with, 2, 3, 4 sack guys. Now, they did have James Harrison as their guy leading the team in sacks this past season, but they also had Bud Dupree miss, most of the season on the IR, came back, and he was still able to have, I think, 4.5 sacks last year. So he certainly should be a guy to help increase those sack numbers a little more consistently on his side of the line. And then they went out and drafted T.J. Watt too. So there's another edge guy there in Pittsburgh. So it's it's hard for me to think that the Steelers are going to do anything but increase from their 9th overall sack totals in the NFL last season.
Yeah, and you look at how they've drafted. I mean, they've been bringing these guys in. It kind of started with Cam Hayward. Now, he was kind of before everybody. He was like 2011-ish. But, the last couple of years, you've had Stephon Tuitt. You've had Bud Dupree. You've had Ryan Shazier. Vince Williams is like an underrated linebacker for them. And over the last couple of years, they've kind of attacked cornerback. So we'll see how Artie Burns pans out for them in the secondary. So they've hit on a lot of draft picks recently, and these guys have been kind of flying under the radar for them. But they're good defensively. They're not great defensively. They're okay. They're solid.
I would probably say, besides the Patriots, I think the Steelers are probably the best drafting team in the NFL. As far as the total draft, not every single player is going to hit. That's just not realistic. Let's go back, Adrian, to, as you referenced those kind of down years where the Steelers were 8-8 and weren't going in. Well, in 2012, they drafted David Castillo, who's become a stud offensive lineman for them. 2013, another year they missed the playoff, if my memory serves me right. They went out and drafted Jarvis Jones out of Georgia, and he was supposed to be the heir apparent, and he was a bust. And now me as a Ravens fan, I was like, yes. But then the second round, they went out and drafted Le'Veon Bell. So they still are able to hit. You know what I mean? So they're one of those teams in the draft, when they take swings, they might not hit on the first round, but one of those guys is going to hit, and going to hit big and be a potential all-pro. That's what the Steelers do, and that's why the Steelers are consistently one of those teams at the top of the AFC Championship competitors. Yeah.
All right, so one quick question before we kind of go position by position. Who would you rather have on your team, Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown?
This is a tough one. I know the report came out that Le'Veon Bell wants to get paid not only like a top running back, but also like a number 2 receiver in the NFL. Personally, for me, I would probably take Antonio Brown just because I think I can probably find ways to be productive in the run game, whether it's with multiple running backs or with just another average back to be successful. I don't think you need a elite running back in the NFL in 2017, but you certainly do need an elite receiver to really help your offense go.
Well, I'll say this. I have Antonio Brown ranked as an 8.7 and Le'Veon Bell as an 8.5. So I do hold receivers in a higher regard because it's a more important position right now. So I will go with Brown. And I mean, just some of the other things. I mean, with a running back, they kind of break down quicker. So, yeah, I mean, but not to take anything away from either of them. I mean, they're both obviously outstanding players. I have Antonio Brown as my second-ranked receiver, and Bell's my number 1 running back. So, I mean, obviously both of them are the creme de la creme of the NFL and what they do.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably say that they have the best, 3-part offensive attack with quarterback, running back, and receiver in the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, the Steelers are in an awesome spot, offensively. So, I think you're splitting hairs. I just put a little more stock in receivers than I do in running backs. But, of course, the quarterback trumps everything.
Yeah. All right. Now, what do you make of James Conner? You think he's going to be any good?
I think they did a nice job drafting James Conner where they did. It was a nice opportunity for them to go and get a new replacement back. I think he's one of those guys where physically he's very, very similar to Le'Veon. Obviously, he's nowhere near the pass catcher, but you know what? Not many guys in the NFL are. Yeah. So I think James Conner, I think it was a nice move for them. I think he's a nice battering ram. I think he's going to be a good, solid number 2 back there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I mean, not that they would do this, but Bell gets a lot of touches. They really use him a lot. Now, I know he's been kind of suspended, so he doesn't play every single game. But maybe Connor's a guy they kind of want to not share the ball necessarily, but give him more carries and give him a breather. We'll see. I mean, I know they had D'Angelo Williams the last couple of years, but we'll see if that's something they do with Connor moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was so interesting to see how they sprinkle him in, especially the fact that Bell's on a contract year too.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the other wide receivers in Pittsburgh. I mean, we know about Antonio Brown, but some of these other guys, Bryant coming back from his suspension, he might be pretty scary if he can get back to what he was doing a couple years ago, that size-speed combination. You got a little jitterbug by the name of Eli Rogers that looks pretty good from the slot for them. So there's another weapon for them. And they just drafted Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, we'll see how he pans out. Not that USC receivers ever do anything, but, you know, as Brendan always says, it doesn't matter what the school is. So what do you think about the wideouts?
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, I mean, when they drafted Juju, it wasn't a position of a need. It was the best player available. And honestly, that's why, you know, they're one of the best teams in the NFL, because they're, you know what, this is the best guy here. Yeah, we're going to take him. We know maybe he's not the biggest need right now, but let's go get the best player and figure things out. So, you know, we have a stud there, Antonio Brown. Okay, cool. Lock. We don't even need to talk about him. He's probably the best NFL all around in the NFL, receiver in the NFL. Okay, done. Don't worry about it. So then we have a couple rotation guys with the rest, and that's what most teams have in the NFL. So we're bringing in back Bryant. In 2015, he had over 90 targets, which is a really, really high number. But he was a elite vertical threat, red zone threat there for Pittsburgh. Really did a lot of the stuff that Antonio Brown maybe wasn't at, and that's also when Antonio Brown had his career best year, when he had Martavis Bryant opposite of him. So bring him in. Awesome. Eli Rogers showed a really good year last year with over 60 targets. As you said it best, jitterbug, slot receiver, able to run everything around the inside. I like him a lot. Then they went out and drafted Juju. You know, Juju is a guy who potentially he could replace Sammy Coates for them. He could replace Martavis Bryant if Bryant continues to not be able to stay out of the situations off the field. So Pittsburgh does an awesome job, in my opinion. Probably is the best receiving core in the NFL, assuming, of course, Martavis Bryant comes back to that 2015 performance he had.
Yeah, I actually have them ranked second wide receivers. Well, receivers, because I do count tight ends too.
Okay.
So New England is actually number one because you have Gronk there. So Gronk and Edelman and Cooks and all them. But, I mean, hey, Pittsburgh's number two. I mean, it's not like I'm complaining.
Sure.
So now the other guys that they have, you talk about Sammy Coates. I'm not the big Sammy Coates guy. He seems like he drops the ball all the time, and you know, whatever. We'll see what they can get from Ladarius Green, a guy that was hurt for them last year. I liked him in San Diego. He kind of was in Antonio Gates' shadow, so you know, we'll see if he can kind of emerge for them this year as their tight end. Yeah, so that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jesse James is a guy, the tight end, who doesn't really get as much love as he maybe deserves. He could be a guy who could be on his way for a breakout year. Now, the trade-off just becomes, you know, if Martavis Bryant does come back and he becomes that big vertical threat and becomes a big red zone threat, well, then really what does Jesse James offer you? If he's not the red zone threat because you have Martavis, and if he's not the underneath threat because you have Rodgers, where does Jesse James kind of fit into the scheme? But as far as a player, he's really darn good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the offensive line now. And, you know, if you remember about 10, 15 minutes ago, I was talking about how, you know, the Steelers, 2012, 2013, they only won 8 games apiece. And one of the main reasons why was their offensive line was an abomination.
Yeah.
What they've been able to do on that line has been extraordinary since about, say, 2014 when Mike Munchak came into the fold. And, I mean, dude, what they've been able to do with guys like Alejandro Villanueva, an Army Ranger who initially signed with the Eagles to play defensive line, and they make him into a left tackle, and not only make him into a left tackle, but make him into one of the better left tackles in the NFL. So you got that going on, and then you got, quite frankly, 2 of maybe the best guards in the league, and David DeCastro and Ramon Foster. You still got Pouncey at center. And their right tackle, Marcus Gilbert, might be the most underrated one in the league.
Just, Adrian, you crushed it there. I mean, look, I would, especially as you watch the Steelers' offensive line really click towards that back half of the season, you could very easily say this is the best offensive line in the NFL. I mean, look, there's a reason that when you watch Le'Veon run with such patience, he's patient because the offensive line, it might take him one more second, but they're going to give him a big hole for him to run through. Yeah, they got a nasty offensive line in front. Offensively, there's very, very few minuses or very, very few negatives that Pittsburgh has.
They are number 5 among my offensive lines. I have Dallas at 1, Cleveland at 2, Oakland at 3, Tennessee at 4, and then Pittsburgh. But they're all like jumbled together too.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I would probably put them a little higher. I'd probably put them ahead of Cleveland. Probably, yeah. I think them and Dallas are probably 1-2
Yeah.
in the league right there. And I probably also say 1-2-3. Tennessee is probably really close too.
Yeah, I can see why people would say Cleveland no. But that's just kind of how things worked out with my player rankings and how I do it. So Joe Thomas is a big number, kind of puts you up in the rankings for me. So, but yeah, moving on. All right, defensive line. Well, we talked a little bit before about the sacks and all that, but I guess we can just get into it just a little bit more, and what Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt bring to the table for the Steelers.
The Steelers have always been that team they've always had a stud defensive lineman. Like for really the better part of my life when watching Steelers play is Brent Kiesel. I mean,
Yep.
I pretty much knew he's not necessarily going to get me a ton of sacks, but he's going to force that tackle back and really win the edge. And then the Steelers went and they go and get into it, and they get Stephon Tuitt to kind of replace that role. Cameron Hayward has been an absolute stud, especially stopping the run. That's really where his forte has been. They have a really, really good defensive line. Not going to blow you away, but for what you ask in the 3-4 is you ask those 3 down linemen to hold blockers up, really set the edge especially, and they do a really darn good job. One of the best front sevens in the NFL too.
Yeah. And dude, you just kind of talked about it. I mean, Brett Kiesel, like what a name to just bust out. And that makes me think of the days, Kimo von Oelhoffen, guys like that. And their big nose tackle was Casey Hampton. So those type of players. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Steelers defensive line, you look at a couple guys that are basically they're good run stuffers, but they can also sneakily get after the quarterback as well. So they stifle the run. Tuitt is very underrated, I think. I don't know. Do people talk about him?
I mean, not really, but I mean, honestly, 3-4 defensive ends are equivalent to like a D tackle and a 4-3. They're not sexy, unless you're one of those guys who's able to get close to 10 sacks. You're not really going to get a lot of praise. It's just not a sexy position.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on the linebackers now. So, what do you think about that crew?
Well, Ryan Shazier is an elite athletic threat that they have. I had the opportunity to work out with him as he was training for the NFL draft down at IMG. I mean, he looks like a Greek god. He was chiseled out of marble, but he is a freak. Everything he can do athletically is through the roof. However, he was top 5 in the league last year for missed tackles. That's not something you really want to brag about in a league that's in a conference that prides itself on being black and blue type of football. And when you play the middle linebacker position in a 3-4, you got to be a surefire tackler. So Ryan Shazier is a guy I kind of need to see a little more, be a little more consistent as a linebacker. I think he's a really good starting linebacker in the NFL. His athleticism is really what helps keep him on the field because he really can play all 3 downs easily.
I feel like Shazier is like the most overrated and underrated player at the same time. It seems like the metrics don't like him, but then when you watch him play, you're like, wow, like he can do a lot of different things. Doesn't PFF have him like a low ranking?
Yeah, they had Pro Football Focus had him at a lower ranking, and it was one of those things. I mean, everywhere you read about everything you read about him is as soon as a paragraph kind of rips him, the next paragraph praises him. So he's one of those guys that can he figure it out? I kind of wonder. Would he be better in a 4-3 as an outside backer? And I think about Levante David of Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
How he is able to really be a freaking speed missile out there on the edge. I kind of wonder if that might be his better fit opposed to being the inside pounding, stopping and winning in the B gap run backer. I don't know if that's his best fit. So I think that might be a big kind of circle for him. However, look, if you had the opportunity to get one of the most athletic backers in the NFL, yeah, you take it and you figure out the rest later.
Yeah. Well, here's what it is. It's like, what does he run? He's like a 4-4 guy, right? He's like insanely ridiculous speed. So he's a guy that will position points on the field that other guys aren't going to get to. But if he misses the tackle, then we like crucify him too. So it's like, he'll I don't know how to explain this, but like take a slower linebacker for instance. So it's like, can you really shit on a guy that's going to get into the backfield on like a jet sweep, but then he misses the tackle? Like, I don't think I'm explaining it right. It makes sense in my head. It's not coming out right.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
You know where I'm
It's a pick your poison. Yeah, it's a pick your poison. Do you want the guy who can make every tackle, but he makes a tackle for -2 or for offensive gain of 2 or 3, or do you want the linebacker who maybe misses half of them, but is able to take a tackle for loss every other time? So I hear where you're coming from. I like him a lot. I'm a big Ryan Shazier fan. I just think that he might not be in the best system.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and like, even if he puts himself in a position to make a play behind the line of scrimmage, I mean, you'd think the rest of his teammates are going to be right there to make the tackle too. So
Sure.
They converge. Gang tackling, so to speak. Another guy for them that I like, I don't know how much you know about Vince Williams, but whenever he's on the field, he's making an impact in the running game.
Yeah, Vince Williams was a guy, he was around 40 tackles, which is certainly statistically a below average inside backer number production you want in a 3-4 system. So there's a little bit of a concern there. He was a flash guy. There's a couple games where I can remember him having, over 5 to 10 tackles. And then there's games where I don't even remember if he even played. So I kind of have a question mark on him. I think that might be a player that we might see the Steelers replace next season draft should they not see a production increase from him.
Well, he's gonna get a shot because he's gonna be the guy that replaces Lawrence Timmons. So
yeah,
we'll see about that. All right, moving on to secondary. Ross Cockrell, William Gay, Artie Burns. Do you like that trio?
I like Artie Burns. And then there's a big drop-off. I mean, Pittsburgh, traditionally, they have never been a team to really win with strong corners. I mean, they had guys like Ike Taylor, but they had never really been a team who was just going to win with their corners. They'd always been a team who tried to do a little more stuff with their safeties and get a little more hybrid stuff and then just really get after you in the backfield. Now, aside from the Carolina Panthers, I would probably say the Steelers are the most zone-heavy team in the NFL. And even back to the days of Ike Taylor, that's why guys like Ike Taylor were so valuable for them because he was able to set the run and be physical. So I think there's a little bit of a concern in the defensive backfield for the Steelers, especially when they're going to go up. And I actually think the Raiders might have a better matchup with the Steelers offensively versus their defense than the Patriots, because I think the Raiders are probably going to run the ball a little better. And I think they're going to have a better offensive line to give them time to look away and pick on guys who are talented but are young in Artie Burns and Sean Davis versus the Patriots. Sure, they have Tom Brady, and that's kind of, it's Brady, so they're going to do just fine. But I like everything that the Raiders have a little more in that matchup than the Steelers.
Okay. I mean, I'll tell you what, if that game is in Oakland, Raiders would win that game. If it's in Pittsburgh, we'll see. But I like Cockrell a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that like he's great or anything, but he's solid. I mean, he's for a guy that you picked up off waivers. I mean, you can't complain about it. You got a starter out of him. We'll see if anyone else can pan out. I mean, Artie Burns, we'll see. Senquez Golson has been a waste of a pick for them. He was a second rounder, I believe. Like, they drafted Cam Sutton this year, 3rd round. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what he can do. Safeties, they got Mike Mitchell, hard hitter. Who's the other safety?
Sean Davis from Maryland.
There you go. Yep. I mean, it's not the best secondary in the world, but I think it's better than it's been.
Yeah, I think they have a very good safety tandem. I wouldn't say they're elite, and I wouldn't say either of them are a potential Pro Bowl guy. Sean Davis might be able to grow into it. Mike Mitchell, I think, is one of the more solid safeties in the NFL. So I just want to see who's going to grow opposite of Artie Burns, and can Artie Burns consistently play that well? He's so young.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the Steelers, I've got them ranked as the 28th best secondary. Well, 28th best secondary, 5th worst secondary in the league. So it's bad. It's not great.
Yeah, I mean, it's not awesome when I'm saying that your best defensive back is Artie Burns, and I'm saying that after a very, very small window. I mean, you don't have guys that kind of walk into the league and are studs right away.
Yeah. All right, who's on the hot seat, Pittsburgh? This is tough. I'm trying to think of a guy. Maybe Martavis Bryant if he fucks up again.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. You could certainly say he's on the hot seat for himself. You know, I might say Ryan Shazier. I think he might be a guy on the hot seat. I think both inside backer situation is a hot situation. Lawrence Timmons had a really poor year last year, and that's obviously why they moved on to replace him. I would probably say both inside backers are in the hot seat. I don't want to say Bud Dupree because even though he, was an IR guy last year, he still had 4.5 sacks in 7 games, so he still showed the ability to do it. But he's got to be able to show it for 16 games. And then we'll see what TJ Watt has too, because he's going to be someone who obviously is there to eventually replace James Harrison when he stops bench pressing 700 pounds and squatting 4 million pounds and whatever else he does on his off days. So.
Dude, Bud Dupree, we'll see. I kind of like him a little bit. He had 4.5 sacks in 7 games, so the production was there. We'll see if he can make it consistent production. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't got anyone else in the hot seat. I can't really think of anyone. So we'll just we'll move on to your fantasy guy, and we'll talk about underrated players.
So my fantasy guy is going to be Eli Rogers. And, it's easy to say guys like Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Bryant. Yeah, I mean, they have so many weapons there, but all those guys are going to get drafted really high, and I think all those guys are going to get drafted pretty appropriately. I mean, Bryant's probably going to get drafted as your 3rd receiver on your fantasy team, maybe a 4 if you're really good. Brown's obviously going to be a top 3, top 4 pick in the league. Big Ben, he's probably going to be a top 12 quarterback in your league. Le'Veon's going to be a top 5 pick in your league. So all those guys, I wouldn't be telling you anything special if I said any of those. So I'm going to go with Eli Rogers. He's a guy I'm going to circle probably as my last couple picks in my final rounds. Again, I do play keeper leagues, so he's a guy I do like, especially because I'm not confident that Bryant is what's going to walk right back in and get 90 targets right away like he did in 2015. I'm not confident in that. So I don't really love the idea of drafting him to be a potential starter on my fantasy team. So I'll draft Eli Rogers late, and I'll wait on it, and I'll see if does he actually get more targets than Martavis Bryant, and he'd be a great keeper if that actually does hold true.
Yeah, and Rogers is a good, candidate for the underrated player role too that we're about to answer. But I won't go with him since you just talked about him. I'll go with Ramon Foster and Marcus Gilbert along the offensive line. Everyone talks about David DeCastro. No one talks about Foster. Foster is just about as good as DeCastro in a lot of ways. And then you got Marcus Gilbert, another guy that nobody talks about. So those two guys. Who else is underrated? I mean, Eli Rogers, you said him. So
Cameron Haywood, he would be my guy. I think he is the definition of a lunch pail kind of lineman in the NFL. No flash, nothing over the top. Just brings his lunch pail, works his ass off every day, and gets the job done.
Yeah, I want to see where I have Cam Hayward. I have him up there pretty high. I didn't even consider him underrated. That's a good one.
It's just tough, and I could say the same thing. I wouldn't say Ramon Foster's underrated because I would say he's probably one of the best guards in the NFL. But
yeah,
when you're,
but no one it seems like nobody. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It seems like nobody really talks about him as much.
No, you're not wrong. No one talks about offensive linemen, especially interior offensive linemen. Tackles get all the sexy praise, and then defensive ends and 4-3s who get a lot of sack numbers, they get the praise. 3-4 DNs really don't.
Yeah. I got Cam Hayward 8th ranked 3-4 defensive end. I got J.J. Watt, number 1. Muhammad Wilkerson, number 2. Joey Bosa, number 3. Davion Clowney, number 4. Jarrell Casey, number 5. Leonard Williams, number 6. Mike Daniels, number 7. And then Cam Hayward, number 8.
I'd probably say the only thing I would disagree, I think Mo's a little too high, even though he's a Temple guy and I'm a little biased. I think he's a little too high there. I probably would have slid him down actually to 8. I would have made a big drop on him, but rest of those guys, yeah. I mean, I think Hayward definitely is in that realm of being underrated just because he's not playing a sexy position.
Well, here's what I'll say about Wilkerson. He got that contract, and it seemed like he got lazy last year. So, we'll see.
Yep, for sure.
That's a little bias there, having him number 2.
Yeah, it is. I get it, though.
All right. That's it. We got nothing else, right?
That's it. Steelers are good again. They'll be Super Bowl contender team again.
Yeah. All right. That's Brendan Albert. I'm Adrian Fecchio. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these 2 videos. Let us know in the comments section. What do you guys think the Steelers are going to do? What do you guys think the Bengals are going to do this year? Let us know. If you think we're idiots, let us have it. I don't care. Just be prepared to take a beat down. That's all. All right. We're out. Peace.
Take care, guys.